He was unjustly expelled from the hospital at a crucial moment, without them knowing the deep secret he kept, capable of changing everything. Find out what happened in this crucial moment. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, when Mr. Benjamin, a 78-year-old man, started to feel the first signs of disorientation. He had left home earlier that day without a specific destination, something that had been happening more frequently lately. Suffering from dementia, Benjamin had moments of lucidity interspersed with periods of complete confusion. Without any documents or money, he walked through the busy streets of the city, trying to remember the way back home. As the hours passed, his condition worsened. A persistent cough and chest pain made each step more difficult. When he spotted General Hospital at the end of the street, a spark of hope shone in his tired eyes. "I need help. My son will pay," he murmured to himself as he headed toward the hospital entrance. As soon as he entered the hospital, Benjamin was quickly attended to by healthcare professionals who, noticing his critical state, directed him to the emergency room. Doctors and nurses began conducting exams and initiating treatment for the respiratory infection he seemed to have. During the admission process, the staff noticed the absence of documents and tried to obtain more information from Benjamin. "Sir, we need some identification or contact information for a family member to proceed," said the nurse, trying to be patient. Benjamin looked around, confused, and replied in a trembling voice, My son will pay for everything. He's coming to get me." The exams revealed that Benjamin had severe pneumonia requiring immediate treatment. Additionally, doctors discovered he had hypertension and diabetes, further complicating his health condition. The medical team knew he would need intensive care and constant monitoring. A young nurse named Mary was assigned to care for Benjamin. She was known for her dedication and patience with elderly patients. From the beginning, Mary showed a special affection for Benjamin, treating him with a kindness that went beyond professional duty. "Hello, Mr. Benjamin. I'm Nurse Mary, and I will be taking care of you. How are you feeling today?" she asked with a warm smile. Benjamin, still confused, looked at her and responded, "I'm waiting for my son. He will pay for everything." Mary nodded, holding Benjamin's hand firmly. "We will take good care of you until he arrives. Don't worry." In the following days, Mary dedicated herself to making Benjamin feel comfortable and safe. She adjusted his pillows, monitored his vital signs, and talked to him whenever she could. Even when Benjamin was disoriented, Mary managed to bring some calm to his heart. "Mr. Benjamin, did you know we have a garden here at the hospital? When you're feeling better, I can take you there to get some sun," Mary suggested while adjusting the medications on the table beside the bed. Benjamin's eyes sparkled for a moment. "I like gardens. My wife and we used to have a beautiful garden at home." Mary smiled, seizing the opportunity to keep Benjamin engaged. "I'm sure it was a wonderful garden. Let's see if we can make you feel at home here." Despite Mary's and the medical team's efforts, the absence of documents and lack of payment began to worry the hospital administration. While Benjamin received the necessary treatment, the bill continued to grow, and no one could find the son he repeatedly mentioned. Days passed quickly, and Mr. Benjamin's situation became a growing concern for the hospital. Although medical care had stabilized his pneumonia and controlled his health conditions, the absence of payment began to generate considerable pressure among the hospital administrators. The hospital's administrative director, Dr. Elena Ross, known for her strict and practical approach, called an urgent meeting with the medical team. Benjamin's bill had already become significant, and without any guarantee of payment, the pressure on the hospital's resources was increasing. "We need to resolve this situation. We cannot continue treating Mr. Benjamin without a source of payment. We need concrete information about his financial guarantor," Dr. Ross said firmly. Dr. Stephen Harris, who had been closely following Benjamin's case, tried to argue. "He is disoriented, Dr. Ross. His mental state is a complication of dementia. We can't just leave him without care. I understand your position, Dr. Harris, but we have to think about the hospital's sustainability. Someone needs to pay this bill, replied Dr. Ross impatiently. The administrators decided to question Benjamin once more in hopes of obtaining useful information. Mary, the nurse, tried to mediate the situation, but Benjamin remained confused and repetitive. Mr. Benjamin, we need to know how to contact your son. What is his name? Where does he live? Dr. Harris asked, trying to stay calm. Benjamin looked at him with glazed eyes. My son. He will pay. He's coming to get me. Frustration grew among the administrative team. Without clear answers, and with the debt increasing, distrust regarding Benjamin's story intensified. Dr. Ross, determined to take action, called another meeting to discuss the next steps. We've reached our limit. It's been 7 days, and we have no indication of payment. We need to free up the bed for another patient who can pay, Dr. Ross stated, receiving murmurs of agreement from some administrators. Dr. Harris shook his head, disappointed. He is a human being, Dr. Ross. He deserves dignity and care regardless of the ability to pay. I'm not denying that, Dr. Harris, but we have to be realistic. The hospital's financial responsibility is at stake, replied Dr. Ross inflexibly. After much discussion, they decided to give Benjamin another 24 hours to make at least a partial payment, or he would be expelled. Time passed quickly, and at the end of the 24 hours, without any payment, the decision was made. The following morning, nurses were given the difficult task of gathering the elderly man's few belongings and taking him to the exit. Mary was visibly disturbed by the situation, but her objections were ignored. I'm sorry, sir, but we can't continue to care for you here, said one of the nurses, trying to hide the guilt in his voice. Lost and helpless, Benjamin sat on the bench in front of the hospital, looking around with a mix of confusion and fear. He muttered to himself, trying to remember where he was and why his son had not yet arrived. Mr. Benjamin was sitting on the bench in front of the hospital, shivering from the cold and increasingly disoriented. He looked around, hoping to see his son's familiar face, but only found the indifference of people rushing by. Meanwhile, inside the hospital, an emergency meeting was taking place in the director's office. Dr. Elena Ross, Dr. Stephen Harris, and other members of the administration were present. The tension in the air was palpable. We can't leave him sitting out there in front of the hospital. It's causing a disturbance and could tarnish the hospital's reputation, said Dr. Ross firmly. Dr. Harris shook his head, clearly frustrated. He is a human being, Dr. Ross. He deserves dignity and care regardless of the ability to pay. We've already removed him from the bed. Now you want to throw him on the street? I understand your position, Dr. Harris, but we have to be realistic. The hospital's financial responsibility is at stake, replied Dr. Ross inflexibly. We cannot allow him to stay out there. It gives the hospital a bad impression, and if it goes viral on social media, we're doomed. One of the administrators, Mr. Milton, added, the situation has gone too far. We need to get rid of him definitively. If he stays here, he could cause problems. Dr. Ross sighed deeply. So, it's decided. We will send security to remove him from the front of the hospital. They need to do it quickly and discreetly. While the decision was being made, Mary, the nurse who cared for Benjamin, was outside the room, listening with a heavy heart. She wanted to intervene but knew her objections would be ignored. Back at the hospital entrance, security guards began to lift Benjamin from the bench. Let's go, sir. You can't stay here. You need to leave, said one of the guards while the other picked up the box with Benjamin's belongings. Benjamin tried to protest, but his words came out weak and confused. My son. He's coming, he will pay. The guards were unwilling to listen. They began to lift Benjamin from the bench when a luxury car stopped abruptly in front of the hospital. An elegant man, wearing an expensive suit, got out of the car and walked quickly towards the group. "Hey, what are you doing with him?" shouted the man, his voice full of authority and fury. The guards stopped and looked at the man, clearly intimidated. "He can't stay here, sir. He's causing a disturbance and can't pay for treatment." The man approached, and seeing Benjamin's face, the anger in his eyes intensified. "This is my father. How dare you treat him like this?" The guards exchanged nervous glances. "Sir, we didn't know." "Of course you didn't. He's sick and disoriented, and you treat him like garbage." The man knelt down and held Benjamin's hand. "Dad, it's me, Thomas. I'm here." Benjamin looked at Thomas, his eyes filling with tears. "Thomas, I knew you would come." Thomas stood up and faced the guards. "I'm taking him back inside, and I want to speak with the hospital director now." The guards did not dare argue. Thomas, with Benjamin by his side, entered the hospital, attracting curious and concerned looks from patients and staff. He went straight to the reception desk, his eyes blazing with anger. "I want to speak with the person in charge here," said Thomas, his voice firm and unyielding. "Tell them Thomas Blackwood is here." The receptionist, realizing the seriousness of the situation, made a quick call and informed them that Dr. Ross would see them shortly. While they waited, Thomas made sure to take care of his father, adjusting his coat and ensuring he was comfortable. A few minutes later, Dr. Ross appeared, looking concerned. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm Dr. Elena Ross, the administrative director. What seems to be the problem here?" "The problem? The problem is that my father was kicked out of the hospital while gravely ill." "I want to know how something like this could happen," Thomas retorted, his voice laden with indignation. Dr. Ross tried to maintain her composure. "We understand your frustration, Mr. Blackwood. However, without adequate information and payment guarantees, we had to take difficult measures." "Difficult measures? This is inhumane." Thomas stepped closer to Dr. Ross, his anger evident. "You not only denied treatment to a sick man, but also threw him on the street. This is unacceptable. Sir, we apologize for the inconvenience. We are willing to continue treating your father at no cost as a form of reparation for the inconvenience," Dr. Ross said, trying to calm the situation. Thomas took a deep breath, trying to control his emotions. "You don't understand. This is not just about my father. It's about every patient who could be treated the same way. I want to see changes here, and I will ensure that happens." The doctors and administrators nearby began to gather, sensing the tension in the air. Thomas looked at everyone with determination in his eyes. "This hospital needs a reform, and believe me, I will make it happen," Thomas affirmed, leaving everyone in suspense about what he really planned. With Benjamin receiving the necessary care, Thomas began to outline his next steps, determined to ensure that injustices like this would never happen again. Days passed slowly as Benjamin continued to receive care at the hospital. Mary, the dedicated nurse, never left his side, ensuring he received the necessary attention. Gradually, Benjamin's health showed signs of improvement, and he began to regain some lucidity. Thomas Blackwood, always by his father's side, took advantage of these moments to reflect on recent events and how everything had come to this point. He knew that to fully understand the situation, it was important to recall the events that had led his father there. It all began a few weeks earlier, on an ordinary morning at the Blackwood residence. Benjamin, who suffered from dementia, was under the care of a daytime caregiver. However, on that specific morning, the caregiver had arrived late due to a traffic issue. Benjamin, unsupervised, decided to go for a walk, something he used to do before his condition worsened. As Benjamin wandered the streets, his confusion increased. He forgot the way back home and began walking aimlessly. As hours passed, he ended up near General Hospital, feeling increasingly weak and disoriented. When he started feeling chest pain and intense coughing, he decided to enter the hospital for help without any identification or money. Meanwhile, Thomas was thousands of miles away on a crucial business trip. As the CEO of a large real estate investment company, Thomas frequently traveled to close important deals. He always ensured his father was well cared for before leaving, but this time, the unexpected failure in supervision had serious consequences. When Thomas discovered his father was missing, he immediately cut short his commitments and took the first flight back home. The desperate search began as soon as he arrived. Thomas mobilized all possible resources, friends, family, local police, but Benjamin seemed to have disappeared without a trace. After days of relentless searching, a crucial tip emerged. An acquaintance had seen a man matching Benjamin's description near General Hospital. Thomas rushed to the hospital and, upon arrival, found his father being mistreated by the security guards at the entrance. The indignation and guilt he felt were overwhelming. With Mr. Benjamin readmitted and receiving the necessary care, Thomas Blackwood wasted no time. He was determined to ensure his father was treated with the dignity he deserved while simultaneously transforming the hospital into a place where no patient would experience what his father had. In the following days, Thomas stayed by his father's side, but also began making contacts. He knew that the change he desired would require considerable effort and a well-thought-out strategy. With his vast network of contacts and financial resources, Thomas began drafting a plan. Meanwhile, Benjamin's condition gradually improved. Mary, the dedicated nurse, continued to care for him with the same attention and kindness. Thomas noticed her dedication and thanked her personally. "Mary, thank you for everything you've done for my father. Your dedication makes all the difference," Thomas said sincerely. "I'm just doing my job, Mr. Blackwood." "Your father deserves to be well cared for," replied Mary with a gentle smile. One night, while Benjamin slept, Thomas received a call from an old friend and lawyer, James Lambert. Thomas had explained the situation to James, and he was ready to help. "Thomas, I reviewed the documents and the hospital situation. If you're truly determined to change things, we need to act quickly and decisively," James said. "I'm prepared to do whatever it takes. This hospital needs a complete overhaul, both in administration and in how it treats patients." Thomas responded firmly. "Great. Let's meet tomorrow to discuss the details and initiate the process," James suggested. The next morning, Thomas met with James at a cafe near the hospital. They discussed the terms of the process and strategies to ensure a smooth but impactful transition. "First, we need to ensure that changes are swift and discreet. Once we have control, we can begin implementing the necessary improvements," explained James while Thomas nodded. With the plan in motion, Thomas used his financial resources and influence to accelerate the process. He knew this would require a significant amount of money, but was willing to invest to ensure that injustices like the one his father suffered never happened again. Days later, the acquisition was completed. Thomas was now the owner of the hospital. Keeping the information confidential, he planned the reveal to make the maximum impact and ensure everyone understood the seriousness of his intentions. The next morning, Thomas returned to the hospital with determination. Without announcing his arrival, he entered through the main entrance and went straight to the reception desk. "I need to speak with Dr. Elena Ross now," said Thomas, his voice laden with authority. The receptionist, surprised by the direct approach, tried to explain. "Dr. Ross is in a meeting at the moment. We cannot interrupt her." Ignoring the response, Thomas proceeded down the corridor toward the director's office. The receptionist called security, who quickly tried to block his path. "Sir, you cannot go in there without authorization," said one of the guards, trying to block him. Thomas stopped and stared firmly at the guards. "You have no idea who I am. Now get out of my way." The guards, hesitant, stepped back, realizing Thomas's determination. He continued to the director's office, where Dr. Ross was in a meeting with other administrators. Thomas opened the door without knocking, interrupting the meeting. All eyes turned to him, shocked by the abrupt interruption. "Dr. Ross, we need to talk." "Now," declared Thomas, his voice firm and unyielding. Dr. Ross, visibly irritated, tried to maintain composure. "Mr. Blackwood, we are in an important meeting. Could you schedule a time to discuss whatever it is?" Thomas took a step forward, his eyes fixed on hers. "No, Dr. Ross, I'm not waiting any longer. I'm here to resolve the situation once and for all." A tense silence filled the room as Thomas continued. "As you know, my father was treated unacceptably at this hospital. I'm here to ensure that never happens again." Dr. Ross tried to intervene again. "What are you talking about? Do you think you can just come in here and make threats?" Thomas looked around at everyone before responding. "Yes, I can. Since I am the owner of this hospital." A murmur of shock rippled through the room. Dr. Ross turned pale, and the administrators exchanged nervous glances. "I will ensure this hospital undergoes a complete overhaul. Anyone who does not align with this new vision will be replaced," continued Thomas, his voice unwavering. "And that starts now." Turning to Dr. Ross, Thomas said, "Dr. Ross, your conduct has been unacceptable. You are terminated, effective immediately." The room erupted in murmurs and protests, but Thomas remained steadfast. He knew change would be difficult, but was determined to ensure dignity and care were priorities. "Ladies and gentlemen, this hospital will no longer be a place where patients are treated like numbers. It will be a place where every life is valued. If anyone disagrees with that, they can leave now," Thomas concluded. With Dr. Ross's departure and the exit of other administrators who did not align with the new vision, Thomas began implementing his reforms. He changed the hospital's vision and values, reviewed all protocols and procedures, and many more changes were yet to come. With Benjamin still recovering, Thomas took on leading the hospital with the same determination he showed in saving his father. He knew the change would be a long process, but he was committed to ensuring a better future for all patients. In the first few days after taking control, Thomas called a meeting with the entire hospital staff. He needed to ensure everyone understood his vision and was willing to collaborate. "Ladies and gentlemen," began Thomas, looking at the anxious faces of doctors, nurses, and staff, "we are here to transform this hospital. Every patient must be treated with the dignity and respect they deserve. I will invest in new equipment, improve our facilities, and ensure everyone receives the necessary training to provide the best possible care." There was a murmur of approval in the room. Many staff members were tired of the old administrative practices and hoped for positive changes. One of Thomas's first actions was to hire new administrators committed to a vision of more humanized care. He brought in hospital management specialists and professionals dedicated to continuous service improvement. Additionally, Thomas made a point to personally meet all the staff. He believed that a positive and collaborative work environment was essential for the success of the reforms. While Thomas led the changes, Benjamin continued to recover. His health improved every day, and he began to regain some of his vitality. Mary, the dedicated nurse, was always by his side, ensuring he received the best possible care. "Mr. Blackwood, your father is making incredible progress," Mary said, smiling as she adjusted Benjamin's pillows. "That's thanks to you, Mary. I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done," replied Thomas, feeling deeply grateful. "I'm just doing my job, but knowing I'm making a difference is rewarding," said Mary, her eyes shining. As structural reforms advanced, Thomas faced challenges in changing the hospital's culture. Many staff members were accustomed to the old system and resisted new practices. Thomas knew he needed to inspire and motivate his team. He organized workshops and training sessions, bringing in experts to teach about humanized care and best management practices. He also encouraged the creation of discussion groups where staff could share ideas and concerns. "We want to hear from all of you," said Thomas in one of these sessions. "If you have suggestions or criticisms, we are here to listen and improve together." These initiatives began to bear fruit. Staff morale increased, and they began to feel part of something bigger. The work environment became more collaborative, and patient care improved significantly. Over time, the first signs of positive transformation began to appear. Patients and their families praised the changes, highlighting the new attitude of the staff and the improvements in facilities. One morning, while Thomas was reviewing some reports, he received an unexpected visit. James Lambert, his friend and lawyer, entered the office with a smile on his face. "Thomas, the changes are happening faster than we expected. I've received positive feedback from several sources," said James, handing some documents to Thomas. "That's excellent, James. I knew it would be difficult, but seeing these results is gratifying," replied Thomas, feeling renewed. "I also wanted to share something with you," James continued. "The legal actions against the previous administration were successful. We proved that several practices were unethical and, in some cases, illegal. This will further consolidate your position and ensure the hospital stays on the right track." Thomas felt a weight lift off his shoulders. The legal battles were an important part of the process, and knowing they had succeeded was a great relief. As the hospital's transformation continued, Benjamin finally received his discharge. He was stronger and healthier, ready to return home under Thomas's care and a team of dedicated professionals. On the night Benjamin returned home, Thomas and he sat in the garden, enjoying the cool breeze. "Father, we did it. The hospital is changing and you're back home," said Thomas, emotional. "I'm proud of you, son." "I know your mother would be proud too," replied Benjamin, holding Thomas's hand. With Thomas's vision and leadership, the hospital began to forge a new path where every life was valued and every patient received the care they deserved. Driven by the transformative experience with his father and the acquisition of the hospital, Thomas Blackwood found a new purpose in his life. Before, his career was defined by success in the real estate sector, where he had built a financial empire. However, the events involving his father and the hospital opened his eyes to a world of deeper and more human needs. Thomas decided he wanted to do more than simply generate profits. He wanted to make a lasting positive impact on people's lives. After the successful transformation of the hospital, Thomas began exploring other areas where his resources and influence could make a difference. He gathered a team of consultants and experts to identify critical sectors that needed intervention and improvement. One of Thomas's first investments was in education. He believed that the key to a better future lay in empowering the younger generations. Thomas founded the Blackwood Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to improving the quality of education in underserved communities. The foundation provided scholarships, teacher training programs, and invested in school infrastructure. "We need to ensure that all children have access to quality education, regardless of their background or socioeconomic status," said Thomas in a speech during the inauguration of a new school funded by the foundation. Inspired by the hospital experience, Thomas expanded his investments in the healthcare sector. He acquired and reformed several clinics and hospitals in underserved areas, ensuring they offered humanized and high-quality care. Additionally, Thomas supported medical research and the development of new health technologies, always focusing on making treatments more accessible to all. "It's not just about curing diseases but promoting health and well-being in all aspects of life," affirmed Thomas during the inauguration of a new pediatric wing in one of the hospitals he had reformed. Returning to his roots in the real estate sector, Thomas initiated affordable housing projects. He developed sustainable communities designed to offer quality housing at affordable prices. These projects included green spaces, community centers, and schools, creating an environment conducive to development and harmonious living. Everyone deserves a dignified place to call home, a place where they can grow, thrive, and build a better future," said Thomas while presenting the plan for a new sustainable neighborhood. Thomas also recognized the power of technology to solve complex social problems. He invested in startups and technology companies developing innovative solutions to challenges such as inequality in access to information, healthcare, and education. These companies received not only funding but also guidance and strategic support from Thomas and his team. To maximize the impact of his initiatives, Thomas established partnerships with governments, NGOs, and other private companies. He believed collaboration was essential to effectively address global challenges. The Blackwood Foundation became a catalyst for these collaborations, promoting joint dialogues and actions. As years passed, Thomas's efforts began to show tangible results. Entire communities were revitalized, thousands of children received better education, and the health and well-being of countless people were significantly improved. Thomas's vision of a more just and compassionate world was becoming a reality. At a commemorative event, Mary, the nurse who had cared for Benjamin, was invited to speak. She described how Thomas's determination and compassion had transformed not only the hospital, but also the lives of many who, like Benjamin, had been forgotten and neglected. Thomas didn't just save his father's life. He transformed the future for all of us, said Mary, emotional. Sitting in the audience, Thomas reflected on the journey he had traveled. He knew there was still much to do, but he felt grateful for having found a purpose that transcended material success. He had discovered that by helping others, he found true fulfillment. And so, driven by his love for his father and the desire to make a difference, Thomas Blackwood dedicated his life to creating a better world for all. His legacy of compassion, justice, and innovation would continue to inspire and transform lives for generations. Years passed since Thomas Blackwood took control of the hospital. Under his leadership, the institution transformed into a model of humanized and efficient care. The structural and cultural reforms made the hospital a place where patients and staff felt valued and respected. Benjamin lived his last years with dignity and comfort, surrounded by his son's love and the dedicated care of competent professionals. Thomas ensured his father had everything he needed, providing him with a peaceful and happy life until the end. The hospital, now renowned for its ethical and innovative practices, attracted doctors and specialists from across the country eager to be part of an institution that put patients first. The local community also benefited from access to high-quality treatments and services. Sitting in the hospital garden, Thomas reflected on the journey he had traveled. He knew the work would never be finished, but he was satisfied with the positive impact he had made. The hospital, once a symbol of neglect and inhumanity, was now a beacon of hope and care. Thomas remembered his father Benjamin's words and felt grateful for having had the opportunity to honor his memory in such a meaningful way. He had transformed suffering into a driving force for good, proving that with determination and compassion, it is possible to change the world around us. As he watched the flowers gently swaying in the wind, Thomas smiled. He knew Benjamin would be proud of what they had achieved together. And although his personal journey was coming to an end, the legacy of love and care he had built would continue to thrive. Thomas closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the peace that came from knowing he had made a difference. The hospital was not just a place of physical healing, but also of emotional and spiritual healing. It was a reminder that even in the most challenging circumstances, compassion and determination can prevail. And so, the story of Thomas and Benjamin Blackwood became an example of resilience and transformation, showing that with a heart and mind focused on doing good, it is possible to create a lasting and positive impact on the world. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment, and check out our next story.